In August 1991, doctors at the Barrow Neurological Institute performed a procedure that pushed the boundaries of medical science. To save Pam Reynolds from a lethal brain aneurysm, they had to induce clinical death, stopping her heart, lowering her body temperature to 60 degrees, and draining the blood from her brain. For over an hour, Pam was effectively a corpse. Her eyes were taped shut, her ears were blocked with speakers emitting constant, loud clicks to monitor brainstem activity. Every surgical monitor showed a flat line, no heartbeat, no breath, and zero brainwaves. But the impossible happened after she was revived. Pam accurately described the pneumatic bone saw used to open her skull, comparing its shape to an electric toothbrush. She then repeated specific, technical conversations the surgeons had while her brain was medically inactive. With her senses physically blocked and her brain function paused, her testimony challenges our basic understanding of biology. It forces us to ask if consciousness can truly survive the shutdown of the body. This search for the soul's physical evidence began long before modern neurosurgery. In 1901, Dr. Duncan MacDougall attempted to weigh the human soul by placing dying patients on a sensitive industrial scale. He claimed the needle dropped by exactly 21 grams at the moment of expiration. MacDougall's findings were eventually dismissed as poor data, but the conversation shifted in the 1970s. Researchers began documenting thousands of near-death experiences, or NDEs, finding that people revived from clinical death often returned with identical stories. These patients, regardless of their background, reported a specific sequence: floating above the operating table, traveling through a dark tunnel toward a brilliant light, being greeted by dead relatives, and experiencing a rapid-fire review of their entire life. The sheer consistency of these accounts suggest we are looking at a universal human phenomenon, as repeatable and predictable as any other physiological process. While these visions feel spiritual, many scientists argue they are actually the result of a failing machine. The dying brain hypothesis suggests that these experiences are the predictable side effects of our biology breaking down under extreme stress. This starts with the visual cortex. Our brains are wired with a massive number of cells dedicated to the center of our vision, while the periphery is managed by a much thinner layer of neurons. When oxygen levels plummet, those sparse peripheral cells are the first to fail, causing the edges of your vision to go dark. Meanwhile, the dense central cells continue to fire, leaving a bright point of light. The feelings of euphoria and the life review follow a similar logic. A dying brain often releases a massive flood of endorphins to block pain, while electrical misfires in the temporal lobe, the brain's memory center, can trigger a chaotic, high-speed replay of past events. Under this lens, the near-death experience isn't a glimpse of another world. It's the final, desperate fireworks of an organ struggling to stay alive.
We've even found that you don't need to be dying to see the light. This was proven through decades of military research involving high-performance fighter pilots. Pilots were spun in massive human centrifuges to test their tolerance for G-forces. As the speed increased, the force would pull blood away from their brains, causing them to lose consciousness almost instantly. When these healthy pilots regained consciousness, they didn't report a simple blackout. They described floating outside their bodies, seeing tunnels of light, and feeling the same overwhelming peace reported by cardiac arrest patients. If a spinning machine can trigger a trip to the afterlife, then these visions are clearly a hardwired physical reaction, not a supernatural event. The universal nature of death also seems to change depending on what you believe. While Westerners see angels, many patients in India report being taken by dark messengers to stand before the god Yamraj and his clerks. These Indian patients often describe being sent back to their bodies because a clerk realized there had been a mistake in the heavenly ledger, a clerical error that doesn't appear in the accounts of non-Hindus. This suggests that as the brain loses sensory input from the outside world, it fills the void with the stories, symbols, and cultural expectations we've carried since childhood. The afterlife doesn't have a fixed geography. It is a blank biological canvas that we paint with the specific colors of the culture we were raised in. Biology explains the feelings and the visions of death quite well, but it still struggles to explain how a person can have objective awareness of their surroundings when their brain is clinically inactive.
This is the mystery of Pam Reynolds. Her brain monitors were flat, yet she knew she was hit with a defibrillator twice to be revived, a detail her own surgeon struggled to explain. Dr. Sam Parnia attempted to prove this objective awareness through the AWARE study, placing hidden images on hospital shelves that were only visible from the ceiling. However, after 4 years and thousands of patients, the results remained inconclusive. Science has decoded the mechanics of the tunnel and the piece, yet small, unexplained cracks in our understanding of consciousness remain. In scientific inquiry, the presence of a few unverified details from a single surgery does not overturn decades of neurological data. We have thousands of cases where the brain behaved exactly like a failing machine, and only a handful of anomalies that suggest otherwise. This aligns with what palliative care nurses see at the bedside. In their final moments, people don't talk about the mystery of what's next. They talk about the lives they actually lived, often expressing regret for the paths they were too afraid to take. If our final neurological act is to replay the life we have already lived, then waiting for a paradise on the other side is a missed opportunity. We have one guaranteed precious existence, and the most important heaven we can build is the one we create right here.